Hello, I'm Brian Foster, and today I am talking about Spiritism. And today I'm bringing to you chapter 13 of Through the Mist, two illustrations. Chapter 13. Before I begin, let us start with a short prayer. Dear Jesus, thank you for coming to earth and showing us the light and the way and the truth about the spirit world. And thank you for bringing Allan Kardec to us in the 1850s so we can codify Spiritism and give us more information. And please help us here on earth now to spread the doctrine of Spiritism, the tenets of Spiritism, far and wide so people can understand what is awaiting them in the spirit realm. Amen. Before I begin, I had a question here, so let me just show that real quick before I begin Through the Mist, chapter 13, two illustrations. So the question was, YouTube search, Saint Faustina visits purgatory with guardian angel. Any comments? I have not. I'll have to look that up on that one. I've not read that report, so I just want to make sure you understood. So I hadn't read that yet. Okay, so let's start. Oh, before we start, if you're interested in Spiritism, as I just prayed about, I hope you are. I would recommend you download my free PDF, and that is at nwspiritism.com. And you can it's right there. You can go down the right-hand side navigation, click on Download Spiritism 101 PDF format. You can also, of course, get it on Kindle, Audible, or paperback. And Kindle is just 99 cents. So, and it's about 100 pages. So again, it's on nwspiritism.com. Okay, let's start. Let us bring this up. Chapter 13, two illustrations. Now remember what we have. We've had our spirit who actually wanted to remain nameless, but other people call him Fred. And he had been, he's seen this woman wake up in this kind of a mansion, and it's more of a working area, but it's also a mansion for the high spirit that lived there. And they knew that as soon as she woke up, she would go back to where she was because she was being pulled back to earth. And our spirit followed her with the help of a higher spirit because he really didn't know how to volitate, meaning movement by speed of thought at that time. So this is where we started. So now he's followed him. He's gone through earth and he sees humans on earth. He doesn't know that he really is on earth because they're all kind of black and dark. And he's told that, well, that's because you're seeing humans from our point of view. And it's the darkness is the fact that they're not very spiritually enlightened. So let's start. Presently, we entered the precincts of a cemetery. I could see the vapory monuments standing like gray-clad ghosts to guard the couches whereupon the dead were sleeping. At a little distance from us was a woman who, at the first glance, I identified as the object of our solicitation. They followed her here. They wanted to see where she was going because they're trying to help her. She really deserves to be in heaven, but she's being pulled back to earth. And just really quick, this is, again, I've said this many times, but I'll say it again. When someone passes on, do not, try to draw them back like, oh, I miss you so much. I can't stand life without you. It's terrible here. Be positive. Be like you're sending your kid off to a week or 2 week summer camp. You don't tell your kid, oh, it's going to be terrible without you. And of course, you're going to make them feel bad, like they don't want to leave you. Tell them that, no, you're going to have a good time. You're going to learn a lot. That's exactly what you should tell someone who passed over. Said, go to heaven, enjoy yourself. I'll be fine. I'll think of you. I'll pray for you to learn a lot and be happy. So I'll carry on. She was standing at the side of a newly made grave, upon the mount of which I personally discerned another young woman sitting with her head buried in her hands, weeping. Exactly what I was talking about. No explanation was necessary to tell me this was one of the friends whose uncontrollable grief had drawn the sister soul back from peace and happiness to an experience the nature of which at present I had not the slightest conception. I was more than interested. It was my first object lesson as showing the power of love in conquering death. Those fine purple lines, to which I have before alluded, were brighter and stronger now. So what he saw when she was waking up, he saw all sorts of purple lines going to her. And of course, these have they know no distance. So there's this woman grieving at the gravesite, and she was creating these connections to this woman who's newly passed over in the spirit world, where in fact she should have been saying, "Yeah, have a good time," right? But now we know. Now let me give you an example of this. A couple who had a son who had a very dramatic brain operation with a tumor in his brain, and he was just almost a vegetable, unfortunately. And yet he kept carrying on and on and on. And they thought he'd passed pretty quick, but he was still, just kind of living in a vegetable state. And they are spiritists, and they finally asked, okay, our son's hanging on. Is he going to get better? And they were told, no, he's not going to get better. In fact, he should have died by now. But you are holding on to him. You have to stop holding on to him and let him leave this body that is of no use to him at this moment and go back to the spirit world and be free. And this shows you the power of it's love, but you can't, you have to understand that there is life never ends. You are immortal. So just because you're leaving the physical body, it doesn't mean the end. And this woman crying at the grave, she'll meet her someday. Those fine purple lines, to which I have before alluded, were brighter and stronger now, binding their souls in closer union, while I saw continuous flashes of sympathy darting to and fro, thoroughly read and comprehended by the one, but by the other, alas, unheeded and unknown, so oblivious was she of her heart's desire. How I yearned for the power to break the last traces of that barrier down, and see them fall into each other's arms, the chasm of their tears bridged over, and the gulf destroyed. In my sympathy, I grew so eager to try and accomplish that Krishna drew me back, lest my impatience might destroy what otherwise was in the bounds of possible achievement. He was as calm and unmoved as the gravestones around us, without the slightest trace of feeling or emotion, until I began to wonder whether he could really be the same man who betrayed such depths of feeling toward Marie. I discovered later on that his calmness was but the placidity of confidence. Every power he possessed was on the alert, waiting and watching that he might render the more substantial service whenever the moment for doing so arrived. And of course, Krishna is the high spirit. And this is how high spirits act. They don't get scared. They don't get nervous. They don't emote too much. They take the situation in, and they're full of love, and they wait until they can draw upon their experiences to do what they can at the moment. And that's part of always trying to perfect yourself. There was this story of a group of spirits went down into the city, deep into the lower zone, and they were helping quite a few spirits escape from a city. And as they did so, the leader of the city, who knew he could do nothing against these spirits, but he was trying to trick them. He could not confront them directly. So he said, "Why don't you wait till everyone meets within the center of town while you're going to lead them out of town," which he didn't want them to do because they were all his slaves, "and come into my house in a kind of more of a castle and wait." And the spirit said, "Sure." So he went in one door, and they went to a room, and then the king says, "I'll be right back." And he went out another door, and then they kind of waited, and then one of the spirits says, "Yeah, do you know what happened?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, he thought he locked us in." And then the spirit wrote, "And of course, it didn't bother us at all. We're not nervous. We're very stoic, and all we did was we made ourselves less dense." And, because in the lower zone, they had to become more dense so they could become visible to the other spirits, and they just walk right through the walls. And he said what happened is the chief of the city told everyone, "Oh, I've trapped all these people. Come and see." And so they went and they looked into the room and there was nobody there, and everybody made fun of him. Of course, he said that's what happens in the lower zone. Everyone is sarcastic. They make fun of you. There's no loyalty or compassion. That's all gone. They're all with who they should be. So again, this just shows you how high spirits manage themselves. Okay, I'll continue. It was a pathetic sight to see the love of the weeping sister entwine itself around that spirit's form, in spite of the evident reluctance of the one to yield to the influence of grief. Poor child, what a different lot hers might have been at that moment, but for the flood of that misguided sorrow. That she realized this was only too plainly visible. Her love had not changed. Oh, if she had but rested a little longer, if she had gained a little strength, or knew in what way she could minister and be of service to the mourner. But now she was helpless. She was made to suffer in witnessing the agony without any power to minister thereto. And this is what you're doing when you're just letting grief come over you and you try to draw that person in. And they're just waking up kind of from one state, a physical state, to the spirit state, and they're a bit confused and they haven't had a chance to orient themselves and carry on. The triumph of grief became momentarily apparent. The ever-contracting lines had drawn them side by side, and the arm of the immortal passed unfelt around the trembling form of her less fortunate sister. Lips too much of heaven for flesh to feel pressed their kisses upon that throbbing brow in vain attempt to soothe and calm, until I wondered how it was possible for a veil to hang between them. Now appeared to be Kushna's time for action. He at once made our presence known, and at the same time encouraging our friend to speak to her sister, a proceeding which, strange as it may appear, she had not yet attempted since our arrival. At the sound of his voice, she turned with a half inquiring, half incredulous look, as if to ask, if she cannot see me, how can she hear? But he persuaded her and promised his assistance, by which it might be possible, at least to make some little impression, until I saw she began to hope even while she trembled with fear. Gently withdrawing her arm, she arose and threw herself upon her knees before the weeping girl, looked steadfastly into her face, and murmured, "Sarah, dear Sarah." The sound was soft and musical as a summer zephyr, and was successful, I think, even beyond Kushna's expectation. The girl lifted her head, the tears for a moment ceasing to flow. She looked around as if uncertain whether the echo of her own grief had deluded her, or had she really heard a voice. Love wrestled with fear, and doubt with strong desire, until fear and doubt prevailed and grief resumed its way. The success, however, was beyond anticipation. Something had been done, and the speaker was by no means daunted at the final result. Had she not stopped the tears for a moment? "Speak again," said Kushna encouragingly. Again the soft voice sounded, but this time it was accompanied by such an intensity of love and pathos, which surely must destroy all doubt in the mind of her sister. "Sarah, dear, don't weep. It is I, Lizzie. I felt your grief, and it has brought me back from heaven." This time the voice was heard more distinctly. Her head was raised before the message was half completed, and the eyes, still swimming in tears, were anxiously turning in every direction. No one was visible. Where could the sound come from? There could be no doubt about it. The old familiar tones were too well known to her for that, though they came so softly as to be scarcely distinguishable from her own thoughts. There might be the solution. It was just what Lizzie would have said, and memory had deceived her until she imagined she again had heard her voice. To save this second disappointment, Kushna now drew near and threw all his influence upon the girl, whose mind was so divided, and at the same time telling Lizzie to call her once again. Hope and certainty now prevailed. There was not the slightest room for doubt. It was her sister who had spoken to her, even though she was invisible. With a scream of joy, she bounded to her feet, hurried homewards with the happy news. We followed. Now, before I start with this paragraph, let me tell you other instances of how this happened. There was this one person, and his niece died. And so he went to her funeral, and he had not been a medium at all before. And she had died in a car accident. And he was in the funeral hall, right? And they're giving the service. And then he heard her, like she was, I think in her early 20s or something. But he heard her as a little girl voice. He said, Uncle, Uncle. And he looked around and he goes, and it says, Uncle, it's me, the name of the deceased. He says, well, this is strange. And then he got up and goes, because he can't talk back, right? Because he didn't know he could just think. So he went out during the service and kind of went through the doors and he says, are you talking to me? He goes, yes. He goes, well, why are you talking to me in a 3-year-old voice? He goes, well, that's because that's what you were thinking of me in that. I can talk to you in my voice now. And she talked to him in her present voice. He goes, I can also talk to you if I was 80 years old. And she talked to him as if she was much older. So it shows her the range of what she can do whenever she wanted to. And she goes, look, there's a person outside, a man who I had a relationship with, but I don't want him in the funeral service. Can you go outside and tell him not to come in? He goes, okay. So he went outside, found the guy, said, she didn't want you to come in. And he said, okay, I understand. Then he came back and he goes, why did you talk to me? He goes, well, I tried to talk to everybody in there, but you're the only one that heard me. So this shows you. This shows you what happens. One time I was at a funeral for a friend, the father of a girl that was in the same like troop of where my daughter was in. And I could feel his presence. He didn't say anything to me, but I just felt like this spirit went right through me. I'm not a medium, but sometimes I can feel spirits. That's about as much as my poor talent goes, which is not far. But it just shows you how this works. So when you're in one of these situations, stop for a moment, calm yourself down, and say, is that you? What can I do for you? Right? Try to calm yourself down, open up, and see what the next message is. Okay, I'll carry on. We followed. Lizzie was elated at the completeness of her unexpected success. Krishna had again become calm and thoughtful. I was in a condition of indescribable bewilderment. If what I had just witnessed was all it appeared to be, that is, if it was real and not a dream. Death was the chimera which would presently disappear. In the declaration of Christ to Martha, he that he liveth and believeth in me shall never die, would become a literal fact instead of a spiritual illustration. And again, this is perfect. When you understand Spiritism and you read the Bible, so many things that Jesus said wasn't an illustration or an example that you could then interpret. It was literal fact. You do never die. You're an immortal soul. When Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. Yes, the dead will take care of the dead. The spirits will take care of the spirits when they come over. Nothing you can do but sit and watch. I mean, there's so many things. The narrow door of heaven. Forgive 70 times 70. Why did he say that? Why would he say forgive 70 times 70? Is it a big deal when you die? You die and no one cares. Well, that's because spirits cares. If spirits will obsess people who they believe did them wrong, and they'll obsess them over multiple lives for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that's where you see people who are diagnosed as schizophrenic or, anything like that. They are a lot of times, not all the time, some of it's chemical, but a lot of times it is spirits obsessing them. So these things, when you read in the Bible and then you read Spiritism, it just like comes out at you. Okay, I'll carry on. The distance which now divided us from Earth had already become so small that a faint whisper could traverse it and be distinctly heard upon the other side. Soon it would be but a veil, perhaps thin and transparent enough for our forms to become visible. Then the rent in all would be restored. And that will happen as we become a planet of regeneration, which we're in the preparation stage. As we go into higher and higher levels of planets, We become closer and closer to the spirit world. We become less matter and more energy. We can float through the air instead of walking heavily, step after step. Not on the planet of regeneration, but maybe the next planet then. I'll carry on. But I was premature. The joyful tidings of which she was the bearer lent fleetness to the steps of Sarah as she hurried home, like the Magdalene, with the news that the stone had been rolled away from the grave and her sister was not dead. She spoke to me while sitting on her grave, she cried in wild excitement. I couldn't believe it at first, but she spoke again, called me by my name, and told me she was here, but I still could not think it true. Then for the third time I heard her and could not doubt. She is not dead, but still with us, even if we cannot see her. She is here. Listen, listen, and you will hear her as I have done. Poor soul. The exuberance of her joy was attributed to an unhinged mind, and parents and friends wept still more at the grief of the death of one child had drowned the reason of another. How many times have we seen that? And and of course, when people say that, oh, I've talked to this spirit or I've heard this voice, or people with near death experiences come back and tell what they've seen, they go, oh, he's just kind of, he was out of it. His brain wasn't working very well. And this is one of the good things about the internet is so many people start sharing their stories and you see common themes. It doesn't matter what's language and culture, wherever they are from, what religion they're in, you see the same themes, right? We're on here on earth to learn. There's reincarnation. You don't die. You're immortal, right? You have a lot of times you'll have a life review, all of these things. But people don't believe it. But now, with more and more people saying, yeah, I felt that. And a lot of people never spoke up until it started to become known. And this is why I think people go to Spiritism, because they say, okay, I need an explanation. Because I had a future told me, and I said, I need an explanation. I thought there was God, but it's far away. But there's something so close to us that can predetermine what's happening a year in advance with just specificity that you cannot believe. Then there's something out there that our culture refuses to acknowledge, and I think that's why a lot of people are. And I think things will happen in the near future, which will even expose this more. Okay. In vain did Lizzie try to make her presence known. Her soft and gentle voice could not possibly be heard in the clamor of such authoritative prejudice. Sorry about that. She waited for a moment's quiet at her sister's side when she spoke to her again, but if her voice was heard, it no longer fired the newfound joy. The cold waters of bigotry had too effectually quenched that to be rekindled at all events for the present. At this discovery, she too began to weep. Earth receded from heaven, the chasm for which for one brief moment had been bridged over and seemed so bright with hope, and again become a black and impassable gulf. And the ignorant assumptions of friends on earth acquired the power to dim the joys of paradise. And of course, you'll see that. In fact, you'll see that when people will go to mediums meetings and even in spiritist centers, that people who are like, I don't know if I believe this. And then they hear messages from spirits. They go, well, that wasn't direct enough. He didn't tell us how to solve all our problems. And so, first of all, high spirits are in heaven are not going to tell you how to solve your problems. You're on earth to solve your own problems. They're not going to give you the key to all the locks and tell you how to make your life wonderful and pleasurable and do nothing. No, that's not going to happen. You're on earth to learn. Like a good teacher who doesn't give answers, spirits will give encouragement and they'll give general paths. They're not going to tell you everything. This is part of your task on earth, to learn this yourself, to find God, to find spirituality, to find Jesus. Because if you were told these things, then you would not put them deep into your foundation of belief, into your faith. And the stronger your faith is, which means almost nothing on earth to us. I have strong faith. Fine. It means you believe no matter what, right? Not a big deal. But faith is measurable in the spirit realm. Faith and focus of your will you can create whatever you want to create. And if you can enhance your faith and enhance that foundation of your character and your personality to the morally good, and know that serving others, love, fraternity, and charity are the basic forces and the basic divine intentions of God, then when you go to heaven, you will be ready to take that faith and create what you want to create, be parts of teams to create mansions, continents, oceans, mountains. Another one that Jesus said literally, faith can move mountains. Well, that's just an illustration again, right? You have to have a lot of faith. You can move mountains. Well, no, literally in the spirit world, faith can move mountains. In one instance, there was a city, and these people in the city had increased their faith and increased their spirituality. This is one of the lower levels of heaven. And they had done such a good job. They wanted to raise that city, the whole city, up a level. And when these higher spirits who were in control and sent to assist the city, they decided to enlarge it. So all the people in the city were sent to this great hall. There was no windows. And then the spirit in charge says, "My friends, you've done a great job. We are going to put the city up a level and expand it." And as she was talking, the walls of the hall became transparent, and they saw new streets, new buildings, new parks, everything. It expanded. Now on Earth, you cannot do that. On Earth, oh, we're going to expand the city. We're going to have to condemn, these old houses, or we're going to have to cut down these forests. No, in the spirit world, where thought is action and it's a logical construct, they expanded the perceived space of the city. They added buildings and parks, whatever they wanted to, by the power of their mind. Faith had moved mountains, had constructed buildings, roads, and parks. This is why you're on Earth. You're going to do these things, but they're not going to let you do these things until you control one important thing, your mind. It's just so exciting when you learn Spiritism. You go, oh, okay. Now I see why I have to go through all this junk. Now I see why I have to have these horrible things at me, because I probably did something like that to somebody before, and now I know not to do that again. It's amazing. Okay, I'll carry on. Krishna's attentions were now directed to draw Lizzie, or Lizzle, I guess. Probably Lizzie. Sometimes this is wrong. Away from the house where the influences of attraction had entirely ceased to operate, love having been supplanted by intolerant superstition. Under these circumstances, his pure and unselfish devotion had the greater force. She turned toward the sympathy, and as in the case of Marie, her grief gave place to exhaustion. Krishna now flashed for assistance, giving her into the charge of friends to carry back to Siamedes, where she would sleep again. How long will she sleep this time? I asked as they left us. I cannot say, probably as long as before. The time varies according to the circumstances. Will she come back here again? That is very possible, he answered. I have known some friends come back 3 or 4 times. Others are so fascinated by this mistaken grief as to be held prisoners by it and almost defy any power to draw them away. And of course, those are people who are tied to materialism. And once you understand Spiritism and you read and you study why you're here, and when you draw away, when you are away from that, you can look at everybody and go, yeah, my Uncle Bob is having a tough time, but hey, he'll learn something. He's immortal. No matter how bad a time he's having, I'm not going to worry about it. He'll be here eventually. His time will be up. My cousin who I loved, oh, I can't believe they made that mistake. It's such a bad situation, but they'll learn from it. That's how you need to learn. How you need to your point of view should be when you're in the spirit world and you start looking at these humans on Earth doing all the dumb things that you see when you're looking at kindergartners and first graders and second graders that are running around making every mistake in the book. But that's part of their learning curve, right? If they were perfect, if we were perfect, we wouldn't be on this planet. We're screw ups. That's why Jesus, again, told us to be humble. We should be humble. If we weren't, if it's the fact that we're here means we should be humble, means we have a lot to learn. Okay. Okay, let's carry on. How different it would have been if it had been possible for her sister to have seen as well as heard her. Not at all. It would only been taken as another evidence of the poor girl's insanity. He's right about that. When we left the grave, I thought everything would end so happily. And Kushna said, I was by no means hopeful of such a result. Experience teaches me otherwise. I should grow more sanguine if I could see a disposition on the part of mortals to admit the possibility of our having attained some knowledge at present beyond themselves. But we cannot expect too much from them, so long as they imagine our only employments are singing glory, 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 are writhing in unutterable torments. They fight the battle we wear. They fight the battle. We wear the crown. They perfect reason and knowledge. We rest from our labors. They hold us in the relative estimation of antiquated volumes upon the shelves of life's library, out of date, not reliable guides to follow, and certainly extremely dangerous to consult. There. Now that is a perfect paragraph. And all of that is our preconceptions. When you die, you go to heaven, you get wings, you get immediate wisdom, and you are on clouds, and you sing and pray, and that's it. No, you go to heaven, you work on yourself, you incarnate again, you help them make your plan and your blueprint for your life on earth so you can improve. And as he said, right, antiquated volumes, meaning the Bible, right? Every word in the Bible is true. No, it's not. Every word in the Bible was given, let's say, to people that they could write this down, but it was given to people who could understand the Spirit talking to them with the knowledge of their technology and culture at the time they wrote it. Spiritism says there's 3 revelations. The first revelation is Moses. And in the Old Testament, it was mainly saying, look, there is a spirit world, and please do what we say. And if you don't do what we say, you're going to have to be punished, right? How many times have you read in the Old Testament? Okay, go into that city and kill everybody. And then they didn't kill everybody. And then they were punished for not killing everybody. It was just kind of, and they gave them the 10 Commandments. Say, okay, can you please at least adhere to this? It's very simple. Please adhere to that. Try not to kill other people, right? Don't be jealous. Try it, right? See if you can take some of those primitive emotions out of your mind. And some people heard that message. Then we came to the second revelation, Jesus. Jesus started, and he had to do this through stories and illustrations. And he started really telling us how you need to act to be in heaven, how you need to think, how you should start transforming your character to go through that narrow door. But he couldn't say it outright because people weren't ready, right? Because you still hear in the Bible things against like homosexuality, and Spiritism is not prejudiced that. But I think if Christ said everything of how loving and tolerant you should be, he would have been rejected right off the bat. They would have said, "No, we're not listening to him." So he could only go so far according to the culture and technology of the time. And Spiritism says this over and over again. The messages of love and fraternity and charity are eternal in the New and Old Testament. Everything else was given to people that they could understand. Then, so he would start telling, okay, you need to start modifying your character. Then the third revelation, Allan Kardec codified the Spirit's book. In it, and when you read it, and you can read the books that I supplement for it, right, and other books by other Spiritism, right, Chico Xavier, Leon Denis, Devaldo Frankel, Yvonne Piera. And so this information is still coming to us, right? It's not like demons, right? No, there's still spirits trying to tell us this is what's going on. Please listen. But Spiritism has said, okay, just telling you how to act. Good. Now we're going to tell you the processes, the organization, what you are doing here on Earth, how this works, what reincarnation is, that karma is real. We're going to start filling in the blanks, why you should behave that way. So first you're told, come on, follow our orders. Then you're said, okay, if you're following our orders, go to the next level. Start transforming yourself. And now we're being told, yes, still transform yourself, but here is more reason for you to motivate yourself to make the changes in your personality and your character. Okay. Then Fred said, does this not discourage you in your work? He goes, no, our knowledge of the government of God shows us that all erroneous ideas of men can only delay, they cannot prevent the success of truth. Ultimately, they attach an undue importance to the earth life and transfer the great advantages, which are the peculiar features of this estate, to the earth condition. When they do so, with them, everything is determined by the 80 years and 10. The temporal governs the eternal, the finite controls the infinite, the things which are not are placed in jurisdiction over the things which are. We know better and therefore can wait if needs be. At the same time, we are not unconscious of the advantage of a right commencement. So, and again, the second paragraph says everything. We are in our lives, and who can blame anybody for this, earth-centric. It's as Copernicus told us, the earth is not the center of the universe. We actually go around the sun. We're the center of the universe. Now that we know the earth goes around the sun, we still think we are the center of everything physical. People ask, there can't be life on other planets. It's just us. Some people, there's aliens. But, maybe they'll come and they'll conquer us. Right? They think the aliens are going to be like us as we get more technologically advanced, and we use it for war and domination. Whereas, now, this is not always true. I'm sure there are some aliens out there who you should not trust. But as civilizations in other planets advance, the spirit world will tell them, this is why you're here, right? We're not going to let you advance past a certain part with the sets of morals you have. Now, this can have a great range. So, as I said before, don't have complete trust in anything that when aliens come and reveal themselves, which they shall. Still okay, let me look at this carefully. But hopefully they'll come in and say, yes, there is a spirit world. There is a God. Okay. Carry on. Is not that a somewhat dangerous doctrine to preach, I ask? And the answer was, why so? It's the truth. I have no fear of consequences when the truth is spoken. If the declaration of the love of God is not strong enough to draw all men unto him, the suppression of that truth, or the foundation of any system of terror, will never drive men to him. When God has formulated a plan of salvation, it only shows you how man arrogates all knowledge to himself when he dares to step in to revise and correct it. And again, as said in the Spirit's book, when God and Jesus have a plan, it shall be done. Not as a snap of a finger as we see it, right? When Jesus Christ says the earth will rise to a plan of regeneration, it will be done. At the speed of which it will be done is up to us, right? As a collective humanity, for us to raise our vibration and raise our love. Carry on. I should almost shudder to think of the way some men would live, I replied, if they were sure that the wrongs of life might be rectified afterwards. So now he's talking about, if people aren't afraid of hell, of eternal damnation, what would people do? And the answer is, that is because you're only looking at one side of the truth. Let's see how it would work out if everything was told. Suppose for a moment that the communication between the two worlds was a recognized fact, and Marie was able to tell on earth the story of her experiences in both, as you have heard it. Do you think many of her hearers would care to cultivate her jealousy? No, I answered. If they could hear it as I heard it, no one would dare face the consequences. So what he's saying is, yeah, yes, there's, you're immortal. So whatever you do wrong, you're still going to be living, but you don't want to go down in those lower zones. And you know that your next trial on Earth or an Earth-like planet won't be the most pleasant because actions have consequences. And when you really get into your inner soul, that actions have consequences, your point of view becomes different. And again, that's why God doesn't come down and say, hey, everybody, I'm God. Actions have consequences. 3 months later, if God hadn't shown up again, which is like nothing for God, right? People go, I think that was mass psychosis. I can't believe that. No, that wasn't that. That was just some hypnotism, because people wouldn't put it deep into their moral foundation. But being on earth and us going through life after life after life, it gets to be into your deepest part of your moral foundation. Not easy. No, I answered. If they could hear it as I heard it, no one would dare face the consequences. Then why fear the proclamation of the whole truth, seeing that it is but the application of righteous sequence? Whatsoever a man soweth, that he shall also reap. Again said, but the harvest will be a natural one, not a vindictive one. You are right, Krishna, I was compared to acknowledge. My idea was unjust because ignorant. Now, said my companion, I will give you a glimpse of the brighter side of our work, and you will see a cause for hope and all those results obtained which you looked for between Lizzie and her sister. My thanks. Had scarcely time for expression before we entered a room almost as tangible as ourselves. Actually, I'll stop there because we'll start this in our next meeting on next Tuesday, March 29th, again on a Tuesday. So I want to thank everyone for being here. This is, this is not by a spiritist medium, but there's nothing she said that contradicts the spiritist doctrine. And so therefore, and this is how Christ works. He sends many messages through many different vehicles and channels of communication. And just like, Socrates, Buddha, Lao Tzu, Confucius, all said, in different variations as far as, the golden rule is. Over and over, we're told, don't hurt other people, right? Treat people as you would want to be treated. And Jesus sent all these messengers in different times and eras and epochs of our world to tell them, people again and again, please behave this way. Of course, we don't listen because there's always something we want, right? But people are starting to. So anyway, I want to say thank you for being here. And again, if you would like to learn more about Spiritism, please download my book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation, at my blog site, nwspiritism.com. You can just go on the right-hand side navigation bar, click on download the PDF. It's also in French, and download it. I also have my other books on the right-hand side navigation bar. And so take a look. Hopefully I write these books to help you absorb more about Spiritism, and I dive deep into what spirits tell us, and I try to explain it in a manner which I think people can grasp better. Anyway, I want to say God bless everyone.